everyone. Welcome to First Congregational Church of Langsburg's online service. Thank you for joining with us here in this digital space. My name is Pat. I am your host for today. Today is the 26th and final week of Ordinary Time. We are completing the entire liturgical year today with Christ the King Sunday, with a section from John chapter 18. As we explore this section, we have a few poems, prayers, and readings for us along the way. May you find blessings on your journey with us today.
I'll be reading Psalm 93 to you this morning, actually a retold version. I am in Marsh Harbor in the Bahamas, where 2 years ago the surging sea that you're going to hear about in Psalm 93 took place here. The Hurricane Dorian demolished over 70% of everything in Marsh Harbor in Abaco, in the Bahamas. I am been back now for about 7 weeks helping my son, and we just got him in his house. They had to rebuild it, and so it's a very exciting time for us. And today, the ocean is on the other side. This is not my son's house, but the ocean is on the other side. But it is raging and nasty and blowing and windy, as you can see. So I am sitting outside on my friend's porch, just for you. And trusting him until the day I die, I will not fear the surging sea. Though troubles in a flood tide rise so high, wave and wave of panic surges through me, and other people's fear and rage increase my own, until toxic mix is deadly. But when it seems these troubles never cease, I sense beneath them all some solid ground, a sure foundation, and an inner peace. And overarching them, the starlit round of heaven's firmament. Though in between the forms of life rage on, with all their sound and fury, I still trust that all unseen, founded below and glorious above, my Savior stands and keeps my soul serene. Psalm 93, retold by Malcolm.
We light this candle to remind us of the humanity of Christ, who lived a full human experience like us, so we can now embrace every facet of our humanity, body, mind, and heart, as a part of our call to become like God. We light this candle to remind us of the divine nature of Christ, who overcame with love every evil we conceived, and whose resurrection proves to all the world that love overcomes evil, sin, and even death.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Tom, out for a walk today because it's kind of a beautiful sunny day. So I thought I'd do a little bit of recording and walking. Now, as you probably figured out, we follow the liturgical calendar, which is an annual cycle of readings that follows the seasons of Christ's life. Now, the first half of the calendar focuses in on Christ's life, and it starts with Advent, which actually is next Sunday. And that prepares us for Christmas and the coming of God into our world. We then move on to Christmastide, Epiphany, Lent, Easter, Pentecost. That's the first half. The second half of the year is called Ordinary Time and follows the people of God and the kingdom of God. Now, this season concludes today with Christ the King Sunday, and it's the final Sunday of Ordinary Time and the final Sunday of the liturgical year altogether. So kind of think of today as the completion of an entire year's journey that started last December on Advent. Now, this is the Sunday when we recognize Christ as King over all creation. As Matthew stated at the end of his gospel, all authority has been given to him. Now, these words all mean something to us. You know, King kingdom, authority, and I'm not so sure we have a good relationship to these concepts, and probably for good reason. How many times have we been run over by someone in authority, or wounded by somebody's kingdom, or abused by somebody seen as a king in authority? Now, these words today almost need to be said with like a verbal asterisk in our tone, like, yes, I'm speaking of a king, but not like that. Or, yeah, we're speaking of a kingdom, but not like you've experienced. Yes, we're speaking of authority, but not like you've known. So today's passage of scripture should encourage us, actually. Now, that was a car. We jump from the book of Mark into the book of John for this special Sunday, and right into chapter 18. And as all the stories that we've heard so far, if you start in the middle of it or near the end, you might not have your bearings about you and know what's going on, which is why I like to pause before the text is read to stop and kind of look around and then give a little background to what's going on so we know where we are in the story. Now, we're in John's narrative of the Passion. Jesus has already been betrayed and arrested and brought before the high priest and found guilty of blasphemy. Now, in the grand scheme of things, globally, the Hebrew people of this time are a small, tiny minority within the whole world, barely even thought of. They don't have the authority to put Jesus to death since they're under, Roman occupation by their government. So they need to collude with them in order to kill Jesus. So they bring Jesus before Pilate, who's the Roman governor of the area, who's probably really irritated with this trivial scene from this petty people from this very small portion of the world with very strange laws. Pilate sees that they want this guy dead and starts to question Jesus and that's where today's text actually brings us, is this interaction between Jesus and Pilate. So let's listen in on this conversation and check some things out on the other side.
Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked, "or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me."
Not too long ago, I was driving to church on a Sunday morning, and it was a really clear, sunny morning, kind of like today. And the roads were free of any traffic. Now, I was heading south on a highway that was about to turn into a freeway. My mind did not register that I had not made that transition just yet, and my speed reflected this. I was traveling 80 in a 65 mile an hour zone. Of course, you know what happens. In my rearview mirror, I see the sheriff's vehicle speeding to catch up, flick on his lights, and immediately my stomach drops out from under me. I pull over, adrenaline pumping, cold sweat starting, muttering under my breath, "Oh, stupid, 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 why were they going so fast?" Well, needless to say, I got a ticket that day. Now, we tend to organize ourselves around ways of holding and wielding power and authority. We either have it or we don't have it. You're either the boss or the worker, the king or the peasant, the sheriff or the speeding car down the highway. And when the lights come on, you must pull over. The sheriff has the authority of the laws that have been drafted, upheld by the courts, and punishable by fees and possibly even jail time. Right? Penalties increase with the severity of the transgression. Now, I merely got a ticket that day, but if I had attempted to outrun the police in my 4-cylinder Aveo, yeah, that's going to happen, and then I got caught, I would have had, probable jail time. Not a cool idea, right? So we tend to take our understanding of authority and kings and kingdoms and then superimpose it upon God and how God operates. We assume that God is like us, but in a perfected form of what we're doing and how we're operating. So when you picture God in your mind, you'd probably tend, to have a picture of an authority structure that you currently understand. A popular modern one is like this old bearded white guy sitting on a throne judging the world. And when we do this, we also contribute to God all the authority structures that we've built. I see this as a pastor quite often. When people find out in conversation that I am a pastor, it's like they realize that they flew by the sheriff going 15 over as they recount, oh man, what words did I say and what stories did I tell? And they start going back like with all the moral indiscrepancies that they may have said. Now, last I checked, I don't get to hand out any moral citations in the name of God. But if I did, I wouldn't hand them out for what most people think is important nowadays, right? The greatest injustices ever committed was the uniting of religious and governmental powers in order to condemn God to death for blasphemy and treason. Jeez. Like, God was just far too loving and merciful for those in authority to stomach. But not loving in some soft, helpless way, but in such a way that pointed to the revealing finger of justice at those whose life and power were built upon the backs of the everyday person. Now, in today's passage, Jesus is asked straight up, "Are you a king?" Pilate asks him that. And Jesus responds with an answer that sounds a lot like, well, yeah, but not like that. You know, not like you understand it. What happens next? Now, we all seem to have a line somewhere that when crossed, we turn to extremes. Like, you hear it in certain phrases that we use, like, all right, that's it. Or we'll say the phrase, you've gone too far. One of the funny ones from when I was a kid in the cartoon is, those are fighting words, right? We really don't know what that line is until we feel the heat of indignation rise up within us when it's crossed. You know, an insult to your family, a phrase that's unacceptable, an act committed that violates something somewhere deep within us. It is our sphere of acceptability, and when ventured outside of leads to consequences and actions, like going 80 in a 65-mile-an-hour zone. These are the kingdoms of our perceptions and values built over our lifetime. And we become judge, jury, and executioner, willing to go to war over these violations of said value systems. Now, what we are willing to fight over reveals our kingdoms. And Jesus said something quite telling next in response to Pilate. Are you a king? He says, my kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over. Our kingdoms are usually an imperfect blend of justice and self-interest. There is something deep within us that wants to see justice happen, but there's also a battle within us that does not want justice at the expense of my own self-interest. If the kingdom in place is beneficial to me, I will fight to maintain it most of the time. If it is not beneficial to me, then I'll probably fight to remove it. So power struggles always seem to be over those who have power and benefit from it versus those who don't have power and are not benefiting from it. Changing hands of authority, switching out those who benefit for those who don't currently. And these battles happen in small places like our family or workplace kingdoms, all the way up to nation versus nation with armies and bombs and wars. But they all operate the same way at the core of each one. Now, Jesus is on a trial within such a system. The religious elite married themselves to the governmental Roman powers and made an unholy alliance. Good thing that doesn't happen anymore, right? Well, the Romans, they got to collect taxes and expand their territory, while the religious elite got to have their temples and pad their pockets with temple fees for religious services rendered. Pilate agrees to use the Roman military to keep the peace, quote unquote, also known as maintain the status quo, and the religious authorities agreed to use the temple system to occupy the people's minds and hearts and keep everyone calm. But a rebellion of unrest was brewing in the people that made both of these powers uneasy. And the people wanted to use Jesus as the spark that would cause the fire of a violent military uprising. But he refuses even that third way and dies at the hands of the religious married to the government, accused of blasphemy and treason, abandoned by his people and closest friends for not doing what they wanted and expected. They wanted him to exchange those in power for those who don't, but leave the system itself untouched so that new people can oppress the former oppressors. But as Jesus said, my kingdom is not from this world. It's not like this world. It's not based on the values and expectations built into the fallen human way of organizing ourselves in this world. It's based instead on something else. It's based in love expressed in justice. What does love expressed in justice look like? I don't think we know. Believe it or not, there was once a time when truth, as we knew it, stated that the earth was the center of the universe, and that the stars and planets and even the sun rotated around us. Now, this truth backed up the powers that be, that stated that humankind was central to all of creation and everything was here for us. But in 1633, it came under speculation by a man named Galileo, whom Queen sang about in the 70s, who was one of the founders of modern science, who stated that the Earth was a planet that orbited around the sun. Now, the powers that be forced him to recant his theory. And under threat of torture, yes, torture, Galileo, who was looking at his inquisitors, he finally recanted, but left the courtroom muttering under his breath, all the same, whatever, it moves. Now, 356 years later, the church finally admitted that it acted in good faith, but was essentially wrong, and finally forgave him in 1970. Yeah, took that long. Now, that got me thinking, are there any ways that we're acting in good faith but are essentially wrong today? Now, the world seems to be asking this question about many things faster than I know how to keep up with. Climate change, politics, gender, sexuality, race, religion, COVID. Like, we might disdain Pilate for his response to Jesus. What is truth? But maybe he was onto something. When your whole world hangs precariously upon the strings of power granted to you from the outside on loan, it would be natural to question the validity of reality and truth as Pilate does. Perhaps he fatalistically, nihilistically observed that we're all puppets in the game of power, with the threat of having our strings cut if we don't play along. Which is also why he's so frightened by Jesus' lack of fear of these powers. Now, Jesus reveals to us here two kinds of authority. There is the authority that we invent and then we divvy out according to the economies of government and money, politics, law that keeps us organized as a people. This authority is given and taken by those higher up on the food chain than we are. And sometimes we get Employee of the Month, or become valedictorian, or win an Oscar, or get a like on our Facebook page. This authority is not based on truth, but on the shifting sands of human opinion. It feels like the truth because our world revolves around them. And we're not really sure how to live without them. Now, this type of authority is not what Jesus is exemplifying. Jesus has more of an inner authority, not granted from the outside, and it cannot be taken away. This type of authority comes from an authenticity, which actually has the same root word as authority, to author. To author one's own identity and value that's not built upon the approval of outside sources, but on the voice of God spoken over you, which says, "You are my beloved, and I am well pleased with you." Now, this voice speaks this truth within you before you accomplish or fail. When you're doing in the outer world flows from this beloved being from your inner world, you have an authority about your demeanor that can be confusing to those unfamiliar with the currency of authenticity. It's kind of like finding out how much Canadian currency you have only after you use Coinstar machine in the Mire, and it's all kicked back out to you because it doesn't really transfer and isn't accepted. And then you're like, wow, I can go buy a car in Canada. One of my favorite theologians right now, Howard Thurman, said this: "There is something in every one of you that waits, listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. And if you cannot hear it, you will never find whatever it is for which you are searching for. If you cannot hear the sound of the genuine in you, you will, all of your life, spend your days at the ends of strings that somebody else pulls. The sound of the genuine is flowing through you. Don't be deceived and thrown off by all the noises that are part even of your dreams and ambitions, so that you don't hear the sound of the genuine in you, because that is the only true guide you will ever have. And if you don't have that, you don't have a thing. You may be famous, you may be whatever the other ideals are which are a part of this generation, but you know you don't have the foggiest notion of who you are, where you're going, what you want. Cultivate the discipline of listening to the sound of the genuine in yourself. That's powerful truth from Howard. Man, this is the inner experience of truth that is far more powerful than the dogmas of whatever is socially acceptable at the current season of human existence. And this is the place where Christ is king, ruling over all creation. Now, our faith is supposed to take us to these places of experience, cultivating the sound of the genuine within us, teaching us how to apply it within our world. So don't seek power, seek authority, but in this manner, from hearing and applying the sound of the genuine within you. Expect to encounter trouble though, because as Congressman John Lewis said shortly before he passed away, speak up, speak out, get in the way, get in good trouble, necessary trouble. Jesus did this in perfect love and nonviolence and overcame even death. And now he offers that destiny to us with the invitation, follow me. Now, Howard Thurman has our benediction encouragement today, which has a spark of John Lewis in it, which makes sense because Howard Thurman was a mentor to Martin Luther King Jr., who then was a leader of the civil rights movement of the 60s. So let's hear Thurman's challenging words for us today and dare to dream of what may be.
The movement of the Spirit of God in the hearts of people often causes them to act against the spirit of their times, or causes them to anticipate the spirit which yet is in the making. In the moment of dedication, they are given wisdom and courage to dare a deed that challenges and to kindle a hope that inspires. And this was by Howard Thurman, Footprints of a Dream, page 7.
Thank you so much for joining with us online today. We hope this service has been a blessing to you. What now? 1. You can participate. If you would like to participate in our services, we welcome your readings with a simple phone recording. 2. Partner. If you would like to give financially to ensure the continuation of this online service, there is a link at the bottom of your screen. And 3. Subscribe. You may subscribe on YouTube or like our page on Facebook to stay updated with our online services. We hope you have found some hope, help, and healing today. See you next week.
Galileo Galilei. Hold that, it's too fast. Hold on. But you know you don't have. Slow down. Pause.